Renee is reviewing movies, and the first movie she is reviewing is the 2003 live-action film version of Peter Pan, as directed by P.J. Hogan, starring Jeremy Sumpter and Rachel Hurd Wood, and of course Jason Isaacs. So, reviewing this one, and I am a huge fan of this film, and of Peter Pan in general. If you've not read Jay and Barry's story, you really should. The original version, don't get the dumbed down ones that have all the pretty pictures but don't have the original content, because that's not worth your time. Also, I advise reading the play, because that's a bit different and there's some extra stuff in there. What else can I advise? If you can get your hand... Oh, I don't have it here. It's in the other room. If you can get your hands on the novelization of the movie, I recommend that, because it's essentially the original script, and it's got content that was like parts of the script that were deleted, so deleted scenes that I do know they filmed and they didn't put in the frickin' film, which was annoying. I wish that there would be a director's cut of this movie. There wouldn't be a demand for it, but I'm demanding it, and I've wanted it since this came out, because I would really love to have a commentary, director's commentary for the film, and I would really love those deleted scenes to be put back in there, because I want them. Anyway, if you've not seen this movie, I do highly recommend it. And I became rather obsessed with it when, just prior to its release, so this was like mid-2003? No, almost all of 2003. I was really interested in it because I was studying fairy tale lore and whatnot at school in my English class, and in my extension English class I was writing some papers on it. I was doing the Cottingley fairy tale thing. If you've seen the movie Fairy Tale, A True Story, the events of the Cottingley farm, like that was based on, I was studying that. And I don't know how on earth it led me to Peter Pan, but it ended up doing so, and I was reading a lot of media articles and things, because there was a lot of controversy, I'll say, a bit of a loose term, but in relation to P.J. Hogan's take on the story, because media was lapping up the idea that it was going to be sexualized, and they were amping up the sexual tension, and that they were making it a coming of age, and I'm using all my rabbit ears, but they did, which the film did do. And I was really curious, because like everyone was like reacting strongly, and they're like, how did you do that to Peter Pan? So I went off and I read Jay and Barry's story, and wasn't really surprised at all, because if you read the book, it is all in there. It's mentioned in a kind of offhand, ironic fashion, but it's there, especially whenever Wendy has her interactions with Peter and with Hook, so I'll get onto that later. But it is there in the original story, so have a read. But I was just very curious about what they were doing with this film, and also they were filming it in Australia. They filmed it in Queensland, and I was up in Queensland just at the end of filming there, so I didn't get to see anybody, sadly, because my mum would not let me stalk them, but they were up there when I was there, and that was very cool. And yeah, I became quite obsessed with it, and the obsession lasted for about a year, so that shows you how that's nothing. I'm not even going to tell you how long my Phantom of the Opera obsession lasted. Ugh. Anywho, and when I finally saw the movie, I really loved it. I really did. I connected to it very strongly on an emotional level, and I still don't know why exactly. And I loved the performances in it. To date, I think one of the best debut performances by a new actor or actress belongs to Rachel Hurd Wood. I personally think that her performance as Wendy is top-notch, and she blows me away in some of her scenes, like the subtlety of her facial expressions and the choices that she makes and her interactions with these two here, just astonishing. Please let me know what you think of her performance as Wendy, because it still blows my mind, really. If I was her, I'd be so proud of myself. And yeah, one thing I'll say about the movie is that I do think that at some point the tone of the piece got compromised. I have a feeling that if he could have, P.J. Hogan might have made it a bit darker and might have amped up the rating. Maybe in his head initially he would have liked it to have been potentially an M-rated film. I got the sense of that from some interviews with him that I read at the time. I feel as though they couldn't strike a balance between what they wanted to do with the more serious thematic ideas that they were playing around with, and some of the analogies that Jay and Barry introduced and things in his original work. I felt that they didn't know how to mix that with the idea of it being a fun family film for Christmas time. So they put a lot of like kid humour in there and then put a lot of the serious stuff in there, and it doesn't mix well together, so it's kind of uneven as a movie, and I admit that readily. It doesn't segue into they don't mesh together nicely or fluidly, which is a shame, because I'm not going to diss the fun, adventure, rollicking, humour kid moments, because some of them are adorable. I think the child actors in this movie are great. I'm trying to remember names now. Harry Eden's in it, and he's a brilliant little actor. Theodore's in it. I've forgotten his last name. He's great. Some of the Lost Boys are amazing. Yeah, but I have a sense that maybe like the studio and others, you know, those like loyalists to Jane Barry and to the family and the foundation and everything, were probably, you know, pushing for it to be a bit more family friendly, and, you know, to mix in some of that more commercially safe content. And I don't know, I felt like there was some compromises, and it didn't end up working too well for just the overall tone and feel of the movie. I think that was something that, like, reviews were often saying that they wished it had just picked one of them and run straight with that idea, as opposed to trying to mix them together, and I can understand why people felt that way. I think it's still, you can take it either way, which is, on one hand, that's a good thing, because you can sit down and just enjoy it as a fun film, with some magic and lots of colour and some flying and all that kind of thing, and just have a good time. Or, if you choose to, you can read into the more serious notions and realise they're not just there as a fluke or an accident, and that the things that are being suggested are in fact being suggested. I think that, I remember seeing it with some friends 3 times in the cinema. That's how nuts I was, and talking to people afterwards, they were like, I didn't know what to think in that scene, because I didn't know they meant it to be that way, and I was like, they did, they really did. And so I think it made people a bit uneasy sometimes, because they just weren't sure. But it was the more serious moments in the movie that I actually really appreciated, that they went where they did with it. One example that I think a lot of people talk about is the, like, sexual tension between Wendy and Hook, who's Jason Isaacs. Now, come on, if your Hook is going to be Jason Isaacs, like, there wouldn't be sexual tension. It's Jason freaking Isaacs. But that was in the original script even more so, which was a shame. I think that they cut some of those scenes, because some of the best dialogue was in those moments between just Wendy and Hook, and it's a real shame that they were taken out. But that is something that was, I'm going to say, hinted at in the original as well. If you read the book, or especially if you read the play, it was always intended, Jane Barry always wanted Hook to, and Mr. Darling, Wendy's dad, to be the same actor, because he saw it as this, you know, Freudian thing, that they were two sides of the same coin. And he also had, like, the notion, you know, that when little girls think of getting married, they look to, I guess, the main man in their life as the example of the kind of person they'd want to marry. So, like, they model their dream man often on their dad. It's just that's a, you know, Freudian concept, but it's true. And I guess he was running with that idea, and so they took it a bit further, I guess, in the movie. But it is in the original book. It is there. And I just thought that was interesting, because to see them play that was kind of cool, because it must have probably been awkward for them both, for Rachel and Jason, but I think they handled those scenes really well. It also humanized to an extent. It humanized, but also amped up the evil, I guess, in Hook, so he was both more sympathetic and more hideous because of it. But I just thought it was an interesting choice, and I thought Jason played it really well. The chemistry between Jeremy Sumpter, who was Peter, and Rachel was also great. I just think they were adorable together, and their scenes were lovely. My favourite scene ever is the tiny one when Wendy and her brothers and the Lost Boys are all about to head on home, and she asks Peter if he'll come back with her, and he just asks her, will they send me to school? That scene was amazing, and how they played that. And also that's just a moment where Rachel's facial expressions were just blowing me away. What else can I say? I think that the script was quite nicely handled. I liked the fact that they poshed everything up, and that the kids got to sound, you know, like Queen's English speaking, and it was quite adorable. Lynn Redgrave was in there for a little bit, and she was really cool as their aunt, their spinster aunt. And I liked, I've forgotten, Olivia Williams as their mum. I think she did a really nice job, and like the hints that she might have been to Neverland in the past and that she's got a faint memory of it, and I think that she played that quite beautifully. If you happen to have the DVD, you'll see that there was an alternate ending, I guess, that they filmed but didn't end up running with, and it's the only deleted scene really on here. And it's taken from the original source material, where Peter comes home and comes back after years, and he thinks it's Wendy he's taking with him, and that's her daughter. And that was in the book. It's so freaking sad, but I'm kind of glad they didn't keep it in the movie, actually, because I think, I don't know, it just didn't play right. It didn't play as well as it could have, I think. I don't think it did justice to the scene in the book, so I'm sort of glad that was taken out, but I don't know, either or. But I cry a lot in the film. I find it really heartbreaking at the end. Even the trailer for the movie I loved, because it used Coldplay's Clocks, and I love that song. I thought that was an effective choice. I'm just a fan. I love the costumes. I love the sets. Even though, and it's like, what I actually enjoy is it's very conscious computer imagery, so it's not really meant to look credible. They wanted it to look dreamlike and sort of like a child's vision of this fantasy land, so it looks it's almost cartoony, and the colours are really heightened and unnatural. I just think it's pretty damn effective, and the physical sets look really cool too, like the ships and the cave and all such things. Yeah, and I really enjoyed the performances. The music's great. I've got the soundtrack. I love the music in it. James Newton Howard did the score, and it was beautiful. Is that all I have to say? I think so, but if you haven't seen it, I do highly recommend it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the different themes that are suggested in it, and also if you think the performances are great. Yeah, so that's Peter Pan. I don't know, should I give it a rating? I guess I will. Just because I will admit the tone is a bit uneven, I think I won't give it a 5, but I will give it a 4 out of 5. Very solid 4 out of 5. And I recommend it if you just enjoy like family-friendly adventure, kids movies, or if you also enjoy classic children's literature, or if you also enjoy just an interesting movie with some fantasy stuff going down, then give it a watch.